Hey everyone! Today we're diving deep into one of the most debated topics in the Monsterverse. Could Godzilla actually die from an overload of radiation? At first glance, it sounds ridiculous. Godzilla thrives on radiation, right? It's his primary power source, his lifeblood. But what if there's a tipping point? What if too much radiation could actually harm or even kill the king of the monsters? We'll explore this from multiple angles: scientific, lore-based, and even from what the Monsterverse films have shown us. By the end of this video, you'll have a definitive answer, or at least the most well-supported theory, on whether radiation could be Godzilla's downfall. To begin this exploration, we must first understand what Godzilla actually is in the Monsterverse. Unlike traditional reptiles or dinosaurs, this Godzilla is an ancient titan, a primal apex predator that dates back to a time when Earth's surface was far more radioactive than it is today. According to Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla and his kin thrived during that ancient radiation-rich era. As Earth's radiation levels decreased, many of these massive creatures either died out or retreated to the Hollow Earth, a realm deep beneath the planet's surface where radiation still pulses in abundance. Godzilla, however, managed to survive, possibly by adapting to both surface and subterranean environments, absorbing radiation wherever it exists. Before we can answer whether radiation could kill Godzilla, we need to understand how he interacts with it. In the Monsterverse, Godzilla is a prehistoric alpha predator who has existed for millions of years, surviving and evolving by absorbing natural radiation from the Earth's core. Radiation as a power source. Godzilla's internal reactor-like biology converts radiation into energy, making him stronger, faster, and more durable. We've seen this in Godzilla 2014, where he feeds off nuclear submarines, and in Godzilla, King of the Monsters, where he absorbs the energy from a nuke to reach his burning Godzilla state. Healing factor. Radiation also accelerates his healing. In Godzilla vs. Kong, he recovers from near-fatal wounds after returning to Hollow Earth, where radiation levels are extremely high. But here's the question: is there a limit? Let's break this down scientifically. In real-world physics, radiation poisoning occurs when an organism is exposed to ionizing radiation beyond its capacity to repair cellular damage. For humans, even small doses can be lethal. But Godzilla isn't human. He's a creature evolved to withstand extreme radiation. Radiation, in scientific terms, is energy emitted in the form of waves or particles. There are different types of radiation, including ionizing and non-ionizing. Ionizing radiation, which includes X-rays and gamma rays, has enough energy to remove tightly bound electrons from atoms, which is what makes it so dangerous to biological organisms. For humans, prolonged exposure can cause mutations, cellular death, and a range of deadly cancers. But for Godzilla, radiation is something else entirely. His biology appears not only resistant to the damaging effects of ionizing radiation, but also capable of converting it into energy. Radiation resistant. His cells likely have ultra-efficient repair mechanisms, making him resistant to mutations or decay. Thermal regulation. In King of the Monsters, Godzilla goes thermonuclear, but doesn't disintegrate. His body contains the energy. Potential overload risks. Meltdown. Scenario: if his internal reactor couldn't stabilize, he might explode, similar to how a nuclear reactor might. Energy saturation. Too much radiation could cause his cells to burn out, like overcharging a battery until it bursts. Could the Monsterverse ever push him to that limit? If we consider that Godzilla's cells function akin to biological nuclear reactors, converting absorbed radiation into raw energy, then it's plausible to assume that he possesses some sort of energy regulation mechanism. Perhaps his cells have hyper-efficient organelles that dissipate excess energy. Or maybe his internal organs are capable of storing and regulating enormous amounts of radiation, releasing it in controlled bursts such as his atomic breath or thermonuclear pulse. The films give us key clues. Nuke absorption in King of the Monsters. The oxygen destroyer nearly kills Godzilla, but a nuclear warhead revives him. However, he doesn't just absorb it, he reaches a critical state, implying there's a threshold. Godzilla vs. Kong's Hollow Earth energy. The Heave's energy source supercharges him, but what if it was 10 times stronger? Would his body handle it? Historical precedent. In Shin Godzilla, continuous mutation from radiation nearly destabilizes him. While not Monsterverse, it shows a possible outcome. However, that doesn't mean there weren't consequences. While the movie doesn't show Godzilla dying from this energy overload, the aftermath suggests a toll was taken. He rests for an extended period, even sinking back into the ocean afterward, perhaps to cool down and restore balance within his body. This raises the question, what if the energy had continued building? What if he hadn't had the opportunity to release it through battle? Could he have combusted, imploded, or suffered cellular damage despite his resistance? One compelling comparison comes from the concept of a nuclear meltdown. In real-world nuclear reactors, when the core becomes too hot and control mechanisms fail, the result is catastrophic. A meltdown, where radiation breaches containment and causes widespread destruction. If Godzilla's biology is similar to a reactor, then it stands to reason that an internal regulation failure could result in a similar meltdown, potentially killing or severely damaging him. The film suggests that while Godzilla can handle massive doses, there might be an upper limit. We've seen glimpses of these processes in action. For instance, in Godzilla, King of the Monsters, after being revitalized by the nuclear detonation, Godzilla enters a state of immense power, glowing with searing energy and releasing nuclear pulses that obliterate everything around him. This burning Godzilla state is arguably the closest we've come to seeing what an overload of radiation might look like in the Monsterverse. Yet, rather than being consumed by the power, Godzilla uses it as a weapon, wielding it like a sword in battle against King Ghidorah. What if an enemy forced more radiation into him? Mechagodzilla's energy beam. In GVK, Mechagodzilla's proton scream overloads him temporarily. A more powerful beam might cause lasting damage. Apex's Hollow Earth energy. If weaponized, could it be used to poison Godzilla with excessive radiation? Another Titan's power, a creature like Destoroyah, if introduced, could theoretically corrupt his energy absorption. After analyzing the science and lore, here's the verdict: short-term overload? Unlikely. He's survived extreme doses before. Critical mass scenario? Possibly. If his body couldn't regulate the energy, like a reactor meltdown, he could explode or burn out. Artificial overload? If an enemy weaponized radiation against him, it might be his Achilles heel. Another factor to consider is the type and concentration of radiation. In the Monsterverse, not all radiation is created equal. For example, the Hollow Earth is described as having a unique radiation source that is more potent and purer than anything found on the surface. When Kong journeys into this realm in Godzilla vs. Kong, we see how the radiation there sustains entire ecosystems and fuels ancient energy sources. It's plausible that this energy is tailored to titans like Godzilla and Kong, making it safe for them to absorb. But what if Godzilla were exposed to an unstable or corrupted form of radiation? What if a synthetic or alien energy source were introduced? This scenario isn't entirely fictional within the Monsterverse. Consider Mechagodzilla, who was powered by the remnants of Ghidorah's consciousness and an experimental energy source. When this unstable energy linked with Ghidorah's lingering psychic influence, Mechagodzilla turned on his creators, becoming uncontrollably aggressive and powerful. If Godzilla were to absorb a similarly unstable radiation source, say, from space, or a weaponized nuclear experiment, his body might not be able to regulate it. The result could be internal chaos, erratic energy bursts, cellular degeneration, or worse. Returning to the Monsterverse specifically, let's imagine a future where Godzilla absorbs too much energy, perhaps after a prolonged war with other titans, a deliberate nuclear trap, or exposure to spaceborne radiation from a creature like Space Godzilla, should he ever appear in the series. At first, the symptoms might be subtle: glowing patches on his skin, increasingly unstable pulses, erratic behavior. Then, as the overload progresses, his internal systems might begin to falter. His nuclear breath might misfire, burning his own throat. His pulses might become uncontrolled, destroying everything around him without discrimination. Titans would flee, sensing something catastrophic. Humanity would panic, unsure whether their protector was becoming a ticking bomb. In this state, Godzilla might descend into the Hollow Earth, seeking a place where he can safely release the energy or let it dissipate. But what if even that fails? What if his body begins to disintegrate from the inside out? Could his regenerative capabilities keep up with the damage? Or would he face a fate similar to the 1995 version? A noble, tragic end, his final explosion of cataclysm that reshapes the Earth. So yes, under the right conditions, radiation could kill Godzilla, but it would take an unprecedented catastrophic level to do so. Alternatively, the Monsterverse might choose a different route. Perhaps Godzilla, ever the adaptive force of nature, evolves. What if instead of dying, he changes, shedding his physical form and ascending into something new? A being of pure energy, a radiation-based life form, a kind of quantum Godzilla. This evolution would allow him to survive even the most extreme conditions and continue protecting Earth in an entirely new form. But would this still be Godzilla as we know him? Or would his transformation represent the loss of his identity? Let's also consider the thematic implications. Godzilla, throughout the Monsterverse, has served as both protector and destroyer, a force of balance. If radiation were to become his undoing, it would serve as a powerful metaphor. The very energy that sustains life and power can also bring death if not respected. This would align with the original message of the 1954 Godzilla, where the monster was a direct metaphor for the dangers of nuclear weapons. A death by radiation overload could bring the story full circle, offering a poignant commentary on humanity's continuing dance with nuclear energy and the consequences of pushing nature too far. However, from a narrative and franchise standpoint, would Legendary Pictures really choose to kill off Godzilla in such a way? Unlikely, at least not permanently. Godzilla is the face of the Monsterverse, but a near-death experience brought on by radiation overload could serve as a compelling story arc. It would raise the stakes, deepen the mythology, and open doors for new titans to rise, maybe even a successor or an offspring, birthed from Godzilla's energy in the aftermath of a near-catastrophic meltdown. Godzilla's resilience is unmatched, but even kings have limits. The Monsterverse could explore this in future films, maybe as a way to temporarily weaken him or as a high-stakes plot device. In the end, the answer to the question, would Godzilla die due to an overload of radiation in the Monsterverse, is complex. Theoretically, yes, it's possible. While Godzilla feeds on radiation and thrives in its presence, there are scientific and narrative reasons to believe that an extreme surplus, especially of the wrong kind, could overwhelm even him. Whether through cellular degeneration, energy imbalance, or psychological destabilization, Godzilla is not entirely invulnerable. However, given his adaptability, regenerative abilities, and narrative importance, it's more likely that any radiation-induced crisis would serve as a turning point rather than a final end. What do you think? Could Godzilla die from radiation, or is he truly unstoppable? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the Monsterverse. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.